In this video, I'm going to look at importing a scanned mesh. And so I select the file that was scanned, and when it comes up, I'm given an option of some units here. I'm just going to leave it on the default, but I'm going to center this at the origin. It could be a long ways from the origin. We're not really sure where that geometry is. If I rotate around, I see that origin goes flying off in space. I want to center it around that origin, so I'm going to do center, and now the origin is in the center of the geometry. Sometimes it can be a long ways from the geometry. I'm going to say OK to that, and so here we see our imported geometry. Now it looks like there are some cylindrical faces in here, some fillets. But if we go to the wireframe visual style, and I'll select wireframe, there are actually thousands of tiny triangular facets in here, and straight lines, no curves. So there might be, it might look like a curve, but there's just thousands and thousands of straight lines that approaches a curve. No curves, straight lines. So I'm going to go back to a shaded visual style, and I'm going to then do a sketch on this plane so I can see how big it is, the geometry. So we just accepted the default on the import, and if I come over here, there's also a unit setting here for the document. But let's see how big this is. So I'm going to draw a rectangle from about right here to about right here, the overall size of the geometry, and I'm going to dimension this. And when I do, I see that it's some 2,000 millimeters. So I don't think that's right. I think 200 millimeters would be more correct. So this is a scale factor of 10, too big. So I'll finish that sketch, and I'm going to go to the mesh tab, and I'm going to go modify and scale the mesh. I'll select that mesh, and I'll put in a scale factor of 1 divided by 10. Now, if I go and edit the sketch that I had originally, and so if I edit this sketch, notice this geometry looks back to the same size it was because we've gone back in history before we did the scale. Let's change this to 200, and then I'm going to finish sketch, and I really want to make this sketch occur before or after that scale factor. So I'll drag this sketch and get it to on the timeline after the scale factor. So here's our sketch, here's the scale factor, and then I'm going to edit that sketch again, and I'll drag it over here, and I'll make it approximately the same size as our geometry down here. I'm going to dimension. Actually, let's just put this point right here at the origin. So I'll do coincident, this point right here at the origin. And so this is going to be my datum, or my 000 on the milling machine. And so I want to move the imported geometry to such that the lower left hand corner is at that point. So I'm going to finish this sketch, and I'll go back to the mesh tab, and I'll do move, and I'm going to select this geometry, and I can select anywhere on here because I don't really care where I selected at this point. But I'm going to move this up a little bit, and let's say we'll move it about there, but I want to change my set point to the origin. So I'll come over here, and I'll click on change set point, and I'll select the origin. Now it's critically important that you come over here and then click done. After you change the set point, click done, and then I'm going to move some geometry around. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try to rotate this a little bit, and so I see that it's 2.6 degrees there. Left side or negative. It'll either be a negative or a positive number depending on how the coordinate system was set up by Fusion when we did that set pivot. And let's go a little bit more or a little bit less. Let's do 1 minus 1, and so I think that was a little bit too much. So I've done this before, so I know about 1.4 looks pretty good. So we're doing this by eye, getting this lined up with the coordinate system. I'm then going to drag this over on that arrow to drag it over on the X, and I'll drag this to drag it down on the Z. I think I have it about where I want it. I'm then going to go around to the right side view, and I see that I need to rotate it this way a little bit too. So I'm going to rotate this, and that looks pretty good right there. I'll then go to the top view, and I need to rotate on the top view. And what I'm trying to do is get it to line up with this line. In fact, I might move it down a little bit to get it closer to that line over here. And then I'm going to change that angle. And let's do that, say, at -3 degrees. And actually, I just changed the Z distance instead of the angle, which I meant to change. Let's change this to, say, -3. And I'm changing the wrong angle here. So let's just drag this and see which one it is. Okay, so I see here which one it is, and then I'll change that to let's say 4, and that's closer. Let's change that to 2, and that looks pretty good right there. Let's see. I'm trying to find the sketch to see if I have it lined up with the x-axis, and I can't really see it through the geometry. Let's move this over a little bit. So I'm going to move this over about here. I might have made that sketch a little bit longer to begin with, so that I could clearly see when I have this centered up here. And I think I need to go down a little bit, and I forget which direction I need to go on that angle. Let's try 1 degree. And that was too much. Let's do 1.5. And I went the wrong way. Let's do 0.5. Okay, that looks pretty good right there. And then I'll line this up again. So it's a trial and error process to get the scan lined up best we can. And when I was doing that, I accidentally changed that. So let's do the set point again, and I'll select the origin, and then I'm going to rotate this. And what I do there, I forgot to done. So let's set that set point. Then don't forget to say done. Now we can rotate this, and we'll get it down some angle, and let's do 3 degrees. And that looks like maybe a little bit too much. Let's try 2.5. And I think I liked it better at 2 degrees or 3 degrees. Here we go. And so I've changed this coordinate system, so I'm going to reset this again on the origin, then select done, and I'll move down some, I'll move over some, and I'll check it from the right side view. So that looks okay from there, and I'll check it from the top view. Now I might want the origin to be right here for the fixed jaw. So on the movable jaw on my vise up here, the fixed jaw back here. And so I'm going to move this geometry down so the origin is right here in this corner, or wherever you want it. Now you can also move it in the manufacturing environment when you go to make your cuts. All right, so I've got my geometry moved, I've got it scaled. I'm going to then start to create some geometry, and we could model the entire part over again using our scan and as reference and using the calipers, but really the only thing we need to model are any cuts that we're going to make out of this existing geometry. So I'm going to dimension that sketch. Now I want the sketch to occur after I did all that moving. So I'm going to drag the sketch until it occurs after the move, or I could drag the move before the sketch. So the sketch is the last thing I have. I'm going to edit that sketch, and I'll dimension it. Let's dimension this, let's say 40. If I look at this from the front view, and so that's more or less. Now, we have a lot of protrusions on our model, both on the top and the bottom. So it's hard to say where we want to set it up and where we want to use as our dimension datums. But I'm going to accept that. And then I'm going to extrude on the solids. I'll do extrude, and I'm going to extrude this till I see it coming through the object. And with my calipers, I can measure a distance that I want to extrude. I'm going to say 35. And that might be a little bit too much. I'll do 34. Anyways, you measure and dimension to what you need. And then I'm going to draw some sketches on here. So this is a block of material. This is the part that we have. We're going to cut material away from that, but we really don't need all of that model because it was already existing when we put this into our vise. The only thing we need to do is model cutouts that we're going to make out of that. And so I'll do a sketch on, say, on this face, and maybe I want to do some kind of feature up here. Maybe I want to do some kind of feature here. Now, don't leave your geometry as blue geometry. Blue geometry, white dots should drive you crazy. Put dimensions in here to fully dimension the features that you're trying to make. I don't know what features we might want, so I'm just going to leave that the way it is. Then I'm going to do an extrude. And let's say I want to cut this all the way through, so I could tell it to cut that through the part. And I'll make that sketch visible again. Let's say I want to extrude this. Maybe I want to go part way into that. Maybe I want to do a cut on this top face. So I'm going to do say a 3-point rectangle. So we see why it's important to know how to actually do modeling in order to make geometry on our part that we've scanned. And I'm going to go ahead and then extrude that some distance down in the block. So we don't necessarily need the actual part modeled, because these are just cuts that we're going to make into this part. But the stock can hold as a placeholder to locate and size those cuts. I might put this visual style back on shaded with visible edges so we can see those visible edges real easily. Turn off the sketches. And so that's getting started with using an imported scan as a mesh reference.